Today we're going to look at data analysis with graphs, and in particular looking at drawing frequency, cumulative, and relative histograms and polygons. So in our example, we are going to be looking at a variety of test scores here obtained from a science test. And there are 30 data points. And with these data points, we are asked four things. First, we're going to construct a frequency table that includes a column for cumulative frequency and relative frequency. Part B, we're asked to construct a histogram and frequency polygon. Part C, we're asked to construct a cumulative frequency graph or an ogive. And part D, we're asked to construct a relative frequency histogram and a relative frequency polygon. So let's begin with part A. Let's start off by filling in our table. So I've kind of already pre-made it with the appropriate headings here. Because our data has such a wide range, our lowest point, our lowest test score in this case is 39, and our highest one being 96. So when we have a large range of data points, we are going to use something called intervals or classes to help us break up the wide range. Okay, so usually for intervals, I like to work with like the tens columns. So starting at 39 as my lowest one, I need to have an interval for the 30s. So from 30 to 39. And I'm going to continue that on up until I get to the 90s. So 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and 90 to 99. Okay, I'm also including a column for midpoints, and that'll become seen later on in the lesson, in the later parts, as the midpoints will actually represent the intervals when we start using the cumulative frequency polygons, and the same thing with the relative frequency polygons and histograms. So just quickly here on calculating midpoints, it's essentially finding the average of the 2 points. So from the lowest and highest end, so we're going to take the sum of 30 and 39 and divide it by 2. And that'll give us our first midpoint. So that is just 69 divided by 2. So that gives us 34 and a half. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing for the next one, and eventually you'll see the pattern what happens. So then we have 40 plus 49 divided by 2, so that equals 89 divided by 2, which gives us a midpoint of 44 and a half. So this trend will carry on. It's always going to end in a 4.5, and we're just going to add 10 from the previous row. So 44 and a half, 54 and a half, 64 and a half, 74 and a half, 84 and a half, 94 and a half. Now, not all your midpoints will always end with a half. For example, if you were to have an interval the size of 5 instead of 10, you would actually have a midpoint that's a whole integer, or sorry, an integer, I should say. Okay, so now let's look at the frequencies. So the frequencies are the number of times the interval appears in the total group of data. So our first, we're looking for 30 to 39. So I usually just skim it, and whenever I see a data point in that interval, I'll underline it to ensure that I don't miss it or I haven't counted it twice. So frequency of between 30 to 39 is just 1. For 40 to 49 now, so let's keep going. So it's also just the 1. From 50 to 59, I have 1, 2, 3. From 60 to 69, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's quite a jump there. From 70 to 79, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From 80 to 89, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so just 5, and finally 90 to 99. Now most of them should be underlined by now, so just the remainder, so 1 and 2. Okay, so we now have our frequencies for each given interval. So that takes care of part A. I'm not going to do the cumulative frequency or relative frequency yet until parts B and C. So let's move on to part B. So what does that say? So it's construct a histogram and frequency polygon. Okay, so we're going to use the table that we have here, and we are now going to create a histogram and frequency polygon. So I have it kind of pre-made here already, essentially just the titles, my x and y axis, and I'm going to use the data from the table to help me graph this. Now a histogram uses bars that are connected, and that represents a continuous range of values. So from 30 to 39, I'm going to use 2 of these columns here to represent that range of data. So 39, 49, 59, 69, and so on. Okay, and I have my frequencies on my y-axis there. So from 30 to 39, I have a frequency of 1. So I'm going to go about halfway up the 1 there. So that's my first part. This little part here, it just represents that I'm starting at 30 and not 0, so it's a little break in the graph there. So let's move on to 40 to 49. Same thing, it's 1, so it's going to be kind of continued on. There's going to be no change in the height from the bar graph. 50 to 59 has 3, so that is up here. Okay, 60 to 69 has 8. It's going to come all the way up here. 70 to 79 is 10. So we're going to go up one more. Try to make this as dark as possible so it stands out. 80 to 89 is 5. So it comes here. And then 90 to 99 is 2, so it's going to end up here. Okay, so this is a histogram here for the frequency. And that's all it is. It's just a connected bar graph. Now we're going to, what does it say here as well? Where was it? We're going to also construct the frequency polygon for it. So the frequency polygon, again, is represented by the midpoints. Now, because we don't have midpoints on our x-axis here, well, we know that the interval of 30 to 39 is represented by 2 we'll call them 2 blocks there. So the midpoint will be the line in between. So I'm quickly going to just identify each midpoint here of the bars. And it's really easy once you have your histogram to create your frequency polygon. Once you have your points there, you're just connecting it now. Like using a straight edge, it kind of shows the trends. Okay, there. Here. Here, down there, and finally last one there. Okay, so the frequency polygon is just shown by the connected lines of the midpoints, and that's about it there, okay? So now you've constructed your frequency histogram and your frequency polygon. Okay, so that's part B. Let's look back at what part C says here. So part C says to construct a cumulative frequency graph or an ogive. Now, cumulative frequency, that's just kind of a running total of the frequencies. So if I take a look back at my table here, cumulative frequencies will come from your frequency column. So the cumulative frequency of the first one here is just 1. Okay, so now I want to find out what the cumulative frequency of 40 to 49 is? Well, again, it's a running total, so I'm going to need to add the number previous to the frequency of this new interval. So simply just 1 plus 1 gives me 2. Similarly, I'm going to add 2 to the next frequency, 3, which is 5. And that pattern's going to continue so on. So 5 plus 8 is 13. 13 plus 10 is 23. 23 plus 5 is 28. And 28 plus 2 is 30. Now, great way to quickly check your answer. The final number of your cumulative frequency should be equal to the number of data points you have. In this case here, I have 30 data points, and my cumulative frequency adds up to 30. So that's how I know I'm correct. Okay, so let's move on here and let's graph the cumulative frequency histogram and frequency polygon. Okay, so again, I've already kind of pre-made our graph here. On the bottom, I have test scores. I'm trying to get into this shot there. And on my y-axis, I have cumulative frequencies. I've gone up by 3 on the y-axis, and my test scores, as I showed or talked about earlier, are represented by the midpoints. Okay, so let's graph this. So between 30 to 39, that's represented by the midpoint here. And again, I'm still using the 2 lines to represent the bar. So again, I have a frequency of 1. So that's about a third of the first block there. Okay, from 40 to 49, my cumulative frequency is 2. So we're going to go up another third of that block. Okay. From 50 to 59, my cumulative frequency is 5. So we're going to go up just right about there. Again, I'm trying to be as exact as possible. I know that if I'm going up by 3, it's going to be a little bit tougher for me to do, but we're going to do our best here. From 60 to 69, our cumulative frequency is 13. Okay. From 70 to 79, our cumulative frequency was 23. So it takes some time to graph it, hence why I kind of pre-made the graph before I started recording. From 80 to 89, my cumulative frequency is 28. So just above here. Okay, and finally from 90 to 99, oh, that should be a 99, just notice that now. From 90 to 99, cumulative frequency is 30, so that's going to be at the very top here. And again, that makes sense because the total number of data points I have will be equal to the last number in your cumulative frequency column, which was 30. So that's we're good. Okay, so same thing here. We've plotted our histogram. Now it's very easy to plot our cumulative frequency polygon. Again, we're going to identify the midpoints here from our histogram. And then we're just going to connect them again with using a straight edge. Okay, and 2 more to do here. Okay. So, so there's that. It's finished now. We have our cumulative frequency histogram and cumulative frequency polygon, also known as an ogive. Okay. So again, this one is different here because we use the midpoints now to represent the intervals. Okay, so let's move on to part D. And part D, again, says to construct a relative frequency histogram and a relative frequency polygon. So similarly here, we're going to work on the relative frequency column. Now this one here is a little bit different. This one here shows the frequency of data as a fraction or percent of the whole data set, okay? So if I know that my data the sample data I have has 30 scores in it, I know that my relative frequency will always be out of 30. And we're looking for the percent of that, okay? So we are going to take our frequency and divide it by the total number of data points. So 1 out of 30 gives us 0.03 repeated. Similarly, 1 out of 30 again will give us the same result, 0.03 repeated. Next one is 3 out of 30. That one's pretty easy, that one's just 0.10. Next one is 8 out of 30. So this one here will give us 0.26 repeated. Let's move on to the next one. 10 out of 30. Well, that's just a third, so that's 0.33 repeated. 5 out of 30 is 1/6. So that will be 0.16 repeated. And finally, frequency of 2 out of 30 equals 0.06 repeated. So again, I've just taken each frequency in the interval and I've divided it by the total number of data points that I have, which is 30. And now that gives me a relative frequency. So again, these are all of the fractions or percents of the total data set. Okay, so now that we have this column filled out, we can now work on our relative frequency histogram and polygons. Okay, so again, on my left side here, my y-axis, I have the relative frequencies. On the bottom here, I have test scores. Yes, give it a quick underline. Okay, so now I can plot my points. So the relative frequency of between 30 to 39 was 0.3. So that's going to stay up here, so 0.3. Okay. Similarly, from 40 to 49, again, it was 0.3. So that's going to stay the same. From 50 to 59, it was 0.1, or 10%. Okay. From 60 to 69, it was 0.26. It's all the way up here, so you can see quite the jump. It's really easy to see how many data points were in each interval when you take it as a percent of the whole. Okay. From 70 to 79, it was 33%. At the very top here. From 80 to 89, it was 0.16, or 16%. So again, we're going to connect our bars because it is a histogram. And last one here, 90 to 99, is 0.6, which is just 2 spaces up here. Okay, so again, I've created the relative frequency histogram. Going to identify the midpoints and going to connect them, which will give me my relative frequency polygon. So again, once you have one of them, it's very easy to make the other. Okay. Okay, and there you have it. So that is the relative frequency polygon and histogram on the same graph there. So that completes our question. If this helped you out, it'd be awesome if you guys like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching and have a great day.